Hello and welcome back to Khemia. We will be continuing where we left off, which, if you recall, is after bad things happened to Nefero and Skip. You know, when they were just sleeping. Um, so after spending some time with Nefero, Scipio ended up waking up and saw that someone was about to try to end the life of Nefero. Thankfully, a drone was present, which promptly put a stop to that. Unfortunately, it triggered Scipio's PTSD, which is related to what happened in the previous visual novel which is Adastra. So, if you don't know what Adastra is, still, I will be linking down to somebody else's video about basically Adastra. It's a really long video, but it basically literally tells you the whole thing of Adastra. It's gonna explain the whole thing there. So I don't have to reread it, even though I was supposed to, with a bunch of other people. But then things happened. But yeah, so we're gonna be seeing, I guess, Scipio try to downplay that because he is an ambassador slash spy slash probably something else. But yeah, so be prepared for that, I guess. Poor Skips. If you recall again, I told you that a lot of what we saw in Arches is technically coming out of Khemia. It was supposed to be actually in Khemia, but it ended up making it into Arches, so now this is the restructured version of Khemia. But yeah. Anywho, so without further ado, let us continue Khemia. He's seen it. He sees what's wrong with me. I'm certain that I'm not going to Khemia anymore. What follows is a patchy, blurry mess that my memory is never able to put together. It's like during my first years of university, getting far too inebriated at the bar only to wake up with a raging headache and the hope that I didn't do anything too awful the night before. But there's no joy in this feeling of inebriation, just numbness. There are a few things that I am able to remember, though. I am unsure if it's real or imagined. Wolves come into the room, and I don't know if they're from the establishment or if they're Imperial officials. More drones follow. I know these are from the palace because only the Imperial family owns drones. Then I'm on a small ship. All the while, I'm trembling and I can't stop, despite not feeling cold or really any distinct emotion at all. Nefero tries to speak to me every now and then, but seems to give up after I only offer one-worded answers. I thought that I was done with this, but it's just like the first night after it happened. Like, it's never left me. I'm still broken. Then I'm being ushered out of the ship by Nefero. Calm is talking to us, but I'm not paying any attention to him. It's like my mind is crowded with too many thoughts, yet I'm not thinking of anything. Or at least, I'm trying not to think of anything. I'm vaguely aware of the fact that Nefero has been cleaning my fur on the way here, yet the smell is still all over me. I've heard that jackals have a weaker sense of smell, or at least not as sensitive as that of wolf. But now, I'm focusing on the smell. I keel over and retch violently. Ahotep! I'm jerked to the side, and at first I think Nefero pushed me away. I wouldn't fault him for it. But instead, he's positioned me over the bushes to be sick into them instead of on the path. Not much comes up, just the wine from earlier, and it burns worse than I remember from my younger years. All the while, Nefero is holding back his mane, just like my schoolmates might have back in those days. Before the riots, anyway. Those events seem to knock the innocence and wonder of being at the university right out of us. Abacus insists that you meet him in the palace. Gods, tell him that we are on our way. Skip is unwell. No, 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 don't tell him that. I am fine. I straighten up purposefully, taking a deep breath, only to breathe in the scent of the assassin. He filters through my nostrils as fresh as when he first splattered through the room. Again, I give a great retch, but I'm empty and nothing comes up this time. Skips, what's wrong? Were you injured? Are you sick? Yes, That's it. Yes, I'm physically ill. I steady my feet again, then straighten up my posture, setting off in the direction of the palace while Nefero follows along, his paw on my back. I shrug him off, not wanting to appear as if I need steadying, like I'm some woman about to faint. I was feeling off earlier in the evening, and I suppose it's developed further. I'm feeling better now, though. I'm regaining my composure. I begin my breathing exercises, the ones that usually steady my pause and racing thoughts. Still, even as I slow my breathing, my vision continues to blacken at the edges in ebbs and flows, a constant threat that I might lose consciousness. That is the one thing that I cannot do right now, not in front of the men who are in charge of this mission. Too much depends on this. Somehow, over the course of 20 paces, I am able to focus my mind and recompose my outward demeanor, all by blocking out what had just happened. I have worked my way up and up to this position for far too long. I will not fall now, will not let the heights that I've reached be used against me. Still, I know what I'm doing isn't going to help tomorrow, or the next day or the next, but it's unimportant right now. Come on, Amicus is waiting. I don't look at him, but I can tell Nefero is staring at me as he follows along my side, and I can tell that he wants to ask further questions. Of course he does, but thank God he keeps silent as we turn to walk through the archway and into the palace. I've only been inside the palace twice. The first time was 2 years ago, with the two other assistants in training, when Amicus interviewed the three of us before sending us back to the university. The last time was last week, when I'd shown up with the same wolves only to watch one, then the other be dismissed until I was alone. I needed to display the same confidence that I'd felt back then, to simply keep the last hour wiped from my mind. My confident stride falters when I see Amicus, though, standing right there in the main hallway. His presence is always intimidating. He is the Emperor, after all. But right now, he looks especially imposing because he's angry. What in the hell were you thinking? More than angry, I've seen him angry before. This is fury. But he's not looking at me. In fact, it's as if I'm not even present, his gaze reserved only for the jackal beside me. This is good, actually. Nefero's smug nature returns, and I have to admit that it impresses me a little bit. Even if he is the pharaoh's son, he is still a lone jackal within the palace of an enraged wolven emperor. Amicus raises a paw as if to stop the jackal physically. No, Nefero. I am not playing your stupid games tonight. This goes beyond. The emperor seems to remember himself and takes a deep breath, though the smoldering fury continues to burn in his eyes. You realize how serious this is? What could have happened? I realize this, yes. I was there. Then what the fuck were you doing in the Clay District? I jump, never having heard Amicus shout like that, or curse in such a manner for that matter. Carelessly showing your face. No appointments. No protection. Oh, they offer protection there. Nefero's joke falls terribly flat, and Amicus lets it hang there in the air, as if to emphasize the stupidity of even saying it. You know, I almost felt guilty assigning a drone to tail you covertly. What if you'd been killed? I thought you were at least somewhat sensible. Amicus's muzzle hangs open for a moment, as if trying to search for words appropriate enough to describe his disbelief and anger. Even through my numbed senses, I am able to feel some shame and embarrassment, not only for myself but for Nefero as well. What had we been thinking? We knew the separatist movement had been gaining a bit more momentum recently, and become more radical. We discussed the possibility of things becoming more dangerous. While I might not matter in the grand scheme of this mission, losing Nefero would... well, it would end the mission. It might even start a war. That's exactly what the separatists want, after all. I suppose I had simply assumed Nefero knew the risk, knew what he was doing, but I haven't even bothered to ask. I look at him and see that he has his ears back, eyes downcast, though they flick in my direction, instinctively causing me to lower my gaze. Amicus's anger seems to lose its edge, his demeanor shrinking a bit as he waits for Nefero to respond. When the jackal offers nothing, Amicus spreads his paws in a gesture of bewilderment. I mean, you're not some frolicking first-year student needing a private room for fornication, are you? I set you up with the best living quarters in the Imperial District. It's a long walk. I was tired, Amicus. What? You... Again, the Emperor is at a loss for words. Anger steadily replaced with disbelief while I silently beg Nefero to just be a little serious. An assessment of the current situation indicates that I have information that may be of use to you, Amicus. What about the assassination? About Nefero's living accommodations. Oh, shut up, Calm. What is it? The magistrate of the Imperial District ordered for the apartment to be renovated and thus evicted Nefero. What? I was not notified of this. According to Adastrian Code 3304 under Housing, Magistrate Anthony was fully within his rights to do so without notifying you, Amicus. Then where the hell have you been living, Nefero? The jackal opens his mouth, but is interrupted by Calm once again. He has been renting various temporary living spaces, mainly within the Silk and Clay districts. I have lodged the addresses of each location if you would like to. Shut the hell up for once, Calm. The point has been made. If all you do is spy, then you should learn to read a room. That word again. Read a room does not compute, Nefero. We know, Calm. Nefero, why did you not tell me of this? Amicus looks less angry now, more confused. Nefero sighs. You are the Emperor of Adastra. You have larger issues to worry about than me getting kicked out of my place of residence because of wolven spite. Not if it endangers your life. If the Pharaoh or even the Vizier knew of your slinking around the worst districts of Adastra City, all of our efforts over the past 4 years could end within seconds. Why are you so sure of that? You seem to think that they care about me. I said none of your games tonight. I know your relationship with your father is a poor one, but frankly, that matters little to me. What does matter is the optics. Imagine the son of the Khemia Pharaoh being murdered on the poorest streets of Adastra. Imagine it. Like it or not, you are my responsibility while you are here, as you are a diplomatic guest. So my inability to at the very least keep you alive would demand an answer from the Khemia and set back all of our work by years if not generations. That finally seems to get through to the jackal, and he does not respond this time. A very uncomfortable silence follows. Then the jackal bows with a quick duck of his head. You are right, Amicus. I suppose I have become too comfortable on this moon. I apologize for my negligence. Nefero then turns to me. And I apologize to you, Scipio. I had no intention of endangering your mission, but more importantly, your life. For whatever reason, the possibility did not even cross my mind. Forgive me. He catches me a bit off guard, but I manage to keep my composure. You have my forgiveness, Nefero. Then, realizing Amicus's eyes are now on me, I quickly turn to him. I am adjusting and learning about this new position that I am in. Still, I should have known such actions were reckless. I am sorry, my Emperor. I kneel before Amicus, holding my breath, at the same time hearing Nefero exhale a gentle sigh, as if seeing me do such a thing bothers him. I don't care, though. This is the moment to prepare myself for dismissal from both the palace and my position. Nefero's paw comes to rest on my shoulder in a somewhat supportive way. Amicus rubs his face with the paw tiredly, sighing loudly. Get up, Scipio. If anyone is kneeling, it should be Nefero. Amicus glares back at the jackal as I get to my feet, swaying slightly dizzy for some reason. Just be thankful that Virginia is not aware of this. Amicus, you should know that a report on the incident has been filed for Virginia upon awakening. Delete that comm. Deleting report on the assassination attempt upon the lives of Nefero and Scipio for Virginia. Gods, I have such a mess to clean up now. Who else knows of what happened? The owner of the establishment and possibly a few housekeepers. Calm. Guard the entrance to that den. Ensure that no one leaves the premise until I arrive. Amicus walks past us, and I can hear the deep rumble of a stifled growl in his throat before he calls over his shoulder. Nefero, you are to take up residence in the palace once more. I'll have your belongings moved here from wherever the hell you've been staying now. Oh, wonderful. In fact, Calm, alert Veterus and Brunus that they will be both moving to residence behind the palace walls first thing in the morning. We cannot afford mistakes at this point. Yes, Amicus. And where shall I bed for the night, Amicus? Amicus is almost past the archway. Same room as last time. It should be the same as you left it. Oh, really? I thought that room was for the Emperor. But Amicus disappears around the corner, a small parade of drones following him. Nefero goes quiet, sighing deeply. Then he rubs the back of his neck, glancing at me. Does this mean that I take the sofa? I gesture at one of the velvet couches, only partially joking as I am not sure where I'm supposed to stay. Still, I'm relieved that I'm such an afterthought in Amicus's mind, at least for now. If you'd like. I don't think that I'd ever seen anyone use them. I believe, however, that Amicus was implying that we share the room. What makes you believe that? There are two beds in that room, if it has stayed the way that I remember. I see. So maybe I'm not such an afterthought. I wonder if Amicus still has our relationship in mind, even though such things seem less important to me right now. I think about my small room on campus, the one that I had been moved 2 years ago, the place that I desperately wish to be right now. Being in a private room amongst the faculty, I don't have to mingle with the students in the dorms, not that I would have anyway, considering it's mostly empty for the summer. But while I like to be alone, I'm not so sure if there's security there robust enough to deal with assassination attempts, and I don't know if Amicus has a drone tailing me as well. Probably not. So, do you wish to speak about what happened, or, in all honesty, I wish to have a long bath. I'm becoming aware of the smell again, now that I am no longer distracted by the Emperor. I'll take that as a no. Follow me. I frown a bit as I follow the jackal. Why would he just expect me to open up? Then I remind myself that he is a Khemian, and I should be adapting to what they expect from a friendship. It's just that I'd rather my issues not be the topic that he's so interested in. We walk in silence through the marble halls and soon cross into the sections that I'm not familiar with. The last time that I visited the palace, I'd been too preoccupied to really take in my surroundings. Now that I am able to see that it's rather empty, almost utilitarian in its design. One would think the halls to be embroidered with gold and encrusted with precious stones, if they only listened to the rumors spread by the lower classes. We come to a stop at what appears to be a door without a handle, and Nefero automatically raises a paw to the black square, which sends the door sliding open at a startling speed. Now that is a bit fanciful, I have to admit. What's even more fanciful is a giant bath, the same size as the public one at the university, maybe even bigger. The university bath is almost always filled with dozens of men, but this one is completely empty. Instead of the sulfuric smell that I'm used to, I'm instead hit by a warm, steamy wall of floral scents. Help yourself. Drones will clean up after you. I step in hesitantly, then notice Nefero hanging back. Uh, don't you need a wash as well? There is a personal bath in the room. Besides that, I feel that you need more, Nefero makes vague, waving motions with his paws. A wide open space to ease your mind. What you experienced was a terrible thing, and I know that it has affected you. I bristle. For that moment, yes. But I've had time to collect myself. Well, take the time to collect yourself further. When you're finished, ask for directions to where I am. Calm will direct you. Nefero steps out, leaving me frowning once again at his abrupt nature. Or is it just rudeness? I had used a firm tone, but only to hint that I didn't want to talk about it. My wolven friends would have understood. I find myself agreeing more with what Veterus said about casual betrayals and the possibility that this casual relationship will be more difficult to maintain than the word would indicate. I have to admit that the more that I get to know him, the more odd he seems. Maybe I misjudged our relationship and Nefero himself, but I can't worry about that now. He's under stress as well, possibly more than me, so I'll ignore it for now. Not to mention slightly drunk, having forgotten about the wine that he drank earlier. Still, the more that I think about it, the more upset that I become, especially after going through something terrible that was essentially due to his negligence. I begin undressing, deciding to be faster with my own tongue when I speak to him in the future. Nefero thinks himself to be more clever than he really is, that much is clear about him. Maybe next time I'll show him that it's not difficult to speak fast while also being rude. Not for me anyway. I simply yield to higher authority, and being an assistant to the scholar on the mission, well, that means that I yield to almost everyone here. Nefero, however, insists that we speak as equals, and if most of my assignment involves needing to learn more about him, then I must do that. I suck air through my teeth as I slip into the water, a bit surprised at how much hotter it is than the university bath. I usually lower myself slowly, but it's painful enough that, as my groin nears the steaming water, I just drop in all at once. I groan in equal parts pain and pleasure before dunking my head into the scented water. I come back up, tasting the salty minerals, leaving me to wonder how they've kept the smell so pleasant. Maybe it's completely artificial. A far cry from the natural springs back in Lux, but I don't mind. I'm already feeling better, shivering down my spine a few times as I imagine the remnants of the night washing off and floating away from my body. I submerge myself a few more times before finally settling back, sighing deeply. I'm finally able to relax, almost aching from the tension of having such important eyes on me the entire day. And from the terror of the past hour, the reminder makes my chest feel hollow and my head feel light. Has it only been that long? So far, Nefero hasn't shown any indication that he intends to tell anyone else about how he saw me react. Still, that frosty look on his face when he left just now. Though I had been reluctant to share my experience with the jackal, I now think that it would be wise to open up to him a bit. He'd seen my reaction and questioned it, and seemed offended by my unwillingness to share. I decided to try to achieve some understanding, just in case he goes elsewhere for answers. During the psychological portion of my vetting process for my position, I'd almost crumbled multiple times. I doubt that I'd be able to do it again in my current state. Then maybe they chose the wrong wolf? It would be difficult confessing my mental weakness to someone that isn't my mindfulness teacher, or my mother. My eyes fly open as I realize that I've forgotten to send my daily message to her. Damn it. Calm?
Yes, Scipio.
Do you have a portal here that I can use?
I'm sorry, but I cannot allow you to use technology reserved for the Imperial family.
I sigh, wondering if I'll have to ask Nefero to borrow his.
However, your personal portal is due to arrive within the minute, along with the rest of your belongings. Would you like me to send it to you in the baths?
Yes, please. I quickly stand up to soap up, scrubbing and then rinsing my fur carefully to really get the spots that felt hard and bristled. I dry my fur in a hurry, and as I'm dressing, a tiny drone floats down from an opening in the ceiling, balancing a silver rod about the length of my forearm on its top. I pluck the portal from the floating machine in a delicate manner, now very aware of what they're capable of in combat. Thank you. I mumble quietly, but it immediately floats away back to its ceiling hatch. I quickly tap it to extend the transparent, glowing panel from the rod. I feel my heart leap in my chest when I see that I have a message waiting for me from Mother. I'd hoped that maybe she hadn't been up yet, even though Lux is several hours ahead of Adastra, and she's always up before Vita rises. I open it and read the small message. Skippy, I hope you are well. Did you fall asleep early? I imagine that they must be working you quite hard. Please respond when you can. All my love. Mother. It was sent around the time that I'd been asleep, before it happened. What if I hadn't survived and never sent her a final message because of my forgetfulness? I start to type a message back, a quick one, but then I notice that the icon in the corner. Visual communication is what truly makes this device a portal. We only use it once weekly, but that day is 2 days away, and because I missed sending my message on time and because I miss Mother. I push the icon resembling an arrowhead, as if pointing in the direction of where she is, thousands of kilometers away. She answers within seconds, and at first all I see is white fabric, then a bracelet, then my mother's face. Skip, are you alright? You fell asleep, didn't you? She doesn't sound too worried or upset, but her chiding voice makes it difficult to speak for some reason. If I were to be completely honest, I'd given up my mission just to be with her again, to be in the warmth of our villa, with the smell of olivon thick in the air. Scipio, you're alright, aren't you? Have you just had a bath? Your mane is sticking up all over. I wish that these were actual portals. I'd reach through and fix it right now. The fortress inside of my mind that I had thought that I'd rebuilt comes crumbling down. I open my mouth, but all that comes out is a sob as the tears well up and soak into the fur of my cheeks. When I arrive at Nefero's room, I find him already asleep on the bed. It's certainly much more exotic than the rest of the palace, but it being the Emperor's room, that makes sense. I see a few crates stacked in one corner of the room, which I assume to be our belongings. I'm too tired to look through them now, however, and find myself slumped into the smaller bed. Even if it is smaller, it is quite a bit more comfortable than any bed that I've ever slept on. Within less than a minute, the babbling fountain behind me lulls me into a deep sleep. The dreams that follow are intense, long, and vivid. I watch as the assassin raises his knife, and this time I can see his face grinning with delight. He's got a glassy look in his eyes, his expression looking almost fake, and I get the unnerving feeling that he's not alive even now. But then I see the drone just up behind him, and I realize the angle. Before I can yell, to warn it that I'm in its path, it fires. At first, I feel the wave, the warping of space that ripples through my mortal flesh. Nothing I've experienced in my life could have prepared me for the pain. I wonder how it's possible to feel so much pain for so long, even though it had seemed instantaneous when it happened to the other wolf. I've been killed with him this time, and a terror grips me, not of the pain, but of death. A whisper of 1,000 dead leaves rattles around me. As you should be. Death is a terrible, terrible thing. I hear screaming, but it can't be me, as I die and feel everything rip apart. But the voice must be lying, because death shouldn't be terrible. It should be a release, a calm eternity after the chaos of life. It's okay. I'm going to the amalgamation, where we're all meant to be in the end. This is okay. This is natural. This is normal. The amalgamation is nothing but an ocean of suffering. Even you know that it's unnatural, Scipio. The voice of rattling, dried leaves, the one that I've heard in the university earlier, terrifies me to my very core. Had the worries and doubts that I've harbored for the past decade been warranted? No, Scipio. It's far, far worse than that. Then somehow, still aware, I feel myself pulled down, down, down. I'm joining the amalgamation, but all I hear are screams and howls and cries. This is more than the afterlife that wolves imagined before full parental contact. They had been right. They're suffering, and so am I. The pain, mental and physical, it's as fresh as ever. No reprieve, no relief, and now my pain melds with the countless souls around me, our suffering seeming to drown us. I had thought the pain of death was bad, but this is a new level, having to feel the agony of everyone who came before me. No, my assignment. I can't die now. But I realize that I am dead, and that my mission doesn't matter in the least bit right now. If this is forever, then it doesn't matter that I am at the start. The beginning might as well be the end, because this is eternity, and that thought alone is going to drive me mad. I lose track of time almost immediately, and now I have no idea how long it's been. At least hours. But Scipio, it's only been minutes. See how quickly it breaks you? Mother? I beg without a mouth or a voice for her comfort, for her to save me like I am truly a pup. She will join you in due time, Scipio, but how will you ever find her amongst the billions? But at least your suffering will become one with hers. No, please no. Unless what? Tell me. I'm begging you now. I'll do anything at this point. And suddenly I am rising now, as if being pulled from the depths of the deepest sea made of suffocating fire. There are other possibilities, Scipio. Anything but this. We know what you truly want and what you deserve. To become useful, fulfill your duties, and then die, naturally, with all the pain dying with you. Of course, useful. The next voice to come through is a stark contrast to the rattling voices from earlier. Instead, it's high, clear, and female. Scipio? Hey, don't listen to that. You'll get answers and help very soon, but right now, you just need to wake up. This is a dream. I've heard that voice before, and I hear a grumbling like a discontented growl, and I remember for just a moment those two voices that I heard on the bench. And then it finally ends. I sit on the stone ledge surrounding the pond, letting my feet cool in the water. I was only a little confused when I woke up in the palace, but very quickly remembered what happened the night before. It's somewhat easier to think back on now, and I start to try and process it, something I should do according to my mindfulness teachings. Still, there is an odd, dreamy quality to what I see, almost like a filter exists between me and the world. It's a familiar, numbing feeling, and I sit there in front of the fountain, feeling as if I'm staring through a fog that I cannot see. This happened last time as well, though it's not as prevalent. Shortly after the riots, I was seeing everything as if I were the one of the stories broadcast on the entertainment channels. A tragic story, but one that at least didn't feel real. A defense mechanism, my mindfulness teacher had called it. Back then, I had trouble telling the difference between dreams and being awake, which was how last night had felt. My actual dreams had been so emotionally exhausting that I'm still feeling hollow. This despite the fact that I had forgotten most of the details upon waking, aside from suffering in an imagined amalgamation. Not an uncommon nightmare, but much more intense, which isn't surprising after last night. I left Nefero still sleeping in the bedroom, secretly hoping that he might seek me out, and I'm relieved when he does. It tells me that he is at least still interested in me, which I remind myself is something that I need to foster. If I weren't serving at Adastra right now, I'd go back home to the outskirts of Lux and hug my mother longer than I've ever have before. The thought brings emotions up that I need to stamp down, so I swallow, as if I'm swallowing those feelings of weakness. Meanwhile, Nefero almost stumbles and almost trips on his way over, looking a bit more unkempt than usual, squinting in the bright light. Getting some fresh air? Oh, I just needed. I wave my paw around, mimicking his own gesture from last night. Space. I apologize for my behavior last night. It is unfair. I wave away the apology, not wanting him to take me seriously. I'm teasing you, Neff. The jackal seems to loosen up a bit as I use his shortened name, something that I've never done before. Still, it was insensitive and cruel. Sometimes I let my emotions get the better of me. It's alright. Are Khemians not known to be blunt? It was insensitive even by Khemian standards. But if space is what you'd like, I think that you really would enjoy the deserts of Khemia. The transition is just abrupt enough that I'm caught a bit off guard by it, and I have to recenter my thoughts. You know, I come from a region of Adastra that is a desert. Yes, but nowhere on Adastra is like the deserts of Khemia. Yeah, countless dunes, right? Among other things, but yes, many dunes. The desert that I come from is a tundra, so I've never really seen those. Lux, correct? I've been there before. My fur was no match for the cold. I look at him, genuinely surprised. Lux isn't usually a place people go to, especially a Khemian. Lux? I'm surprised. I mean, I'm still proud of my city for becoming what it is despite the hurdles, but it's notoriously anti-Khemian. Nefero shrugs. When a city or entire world is having those hardships, it's usually not the fault of those that live there. They call it the city of rebellion, but from what I saw, it is more the city of isolation. I'm surprised by his insight, and even more so by what he says next. Is that why you're here? You're driven to look for something more? In a way, a frozen tundra can leave one wanting for more, even if it does have the best hot springs on the moon. If I'm being honest, I hate Lux more than I love it, but I feel that saying so along with the reasons, is not compatible with Khemian mindset. Those hot springs are divine, though. Adastrian hot baths are one of the most pleasurable aspects of your culture. I don't understand why Khemia hasn't implemented them in every population center yet. Possibly because Khemia does not wish to admit that they borrowed any culture from Adastra? I'm half serious, but I understand that Adastra's influence is the weakest amongst all of the siblings. It was a confusing experience, being a student of Khemian culture admiring its capabilities while conscious of your own inferiority. I think back to my primary schooling and how I would go to the library obsessively examining the educational murals of Khemia and sprawling dunes below illuminated by the bright moon above. Meanwhile, the jackals danced in the moonlight. That was probably the beginning of my obsession with Khemia, and Nefero reminding me that I might be able to go. It penetrates through my numbed fog and I feel some excitement, but also apprehension because I know that I need to talk to Nefero about last night if I am ever going to rest easy. It must show on my face. What's wrong? Can I speak to you for a moment about something that I'd like to keep private between us? Nefero walks closer to the edge of the pond. Well, it depends on what that something is. Promising to keep a secret before knowing. Hey, Hotep! I jump to, bringing my paws up to be at the ready. What? I look back at the jackal as he stumbles back, staring with wide eyes at the ground beside me. I look down, finding nothing but stone and a garden spider. I look back up at him, my heart hammering to bits in my chest, trying to fight off a familiar wave of rising panic. What is it, Nefero? If he's playing games with me in my current state, I don't think that I would be able to forgive him. But now he's shuddering, looking angry. God damn your 8 eyes. It's every time in this awful garden. I look at the spider, motionless, legs fanned out to touch every side of the pond's stone border. Are you speaking to a spider, Nefero? And how the hell do you sit next to it? It's disgusting. I sit there, confused, completely thrown off by this sudden intense, even violent reaction from Nefero. What's wrong with it? Everything. I start to smile a little. Are you afraid of it, Nefero? You know that their venom is hardly... I know. Many of you wolves remind me of this. It doesn't change the fact that they are an abomination. I look back down at the creature, frowning before poking one of my blunt claws at the very back of its abdomen. Like lightning, it skitters away across the stone slabs of the ground and towards a pillar. Nefero's body is tense until he decides it's moved far enough away. They're the most natural and effective form of pest control. You know, back when I was a pup, I could catch them and keep them as pets. Nefero watches a spider warily before approaching the edge of the pond, looking around closely before finally sitting next to me. Cultural differences, I suppose. I think back to my studies on Khemian wildlife, of the many dangerous and extremely venomous creatures that prowl through the sands. Are spiders dangerous on Khemia? I know other arachnids can pose a threat. Scorpions, I think they're called. The creatures with those incredibly curved, stingy tails. Nefero dips his feet into the water with a sigh. Incredibly painful stinging tails. Even on this planet, I shake out my clothing and bedding before using them. It became a habit after an incident with one of my loincloths during my youth. I will only say that I could not sit properly for several days. Otherwise, our largest spiders are tarantulas, which are somehow much easier to look at than... The jackal shudders again, and this time I keep a straight face. What are basically true spiders, only 10 times the size that they have any right to be. If you have aggressive arachnoids on your planet, then I feel your fear is completely reasonable. I have a very strong fear of the types of people that live in the Clay District. Snakes. In fact, I believe my reaction would have been worse than yours just now. Well, I believe that fear is more rational. I am glad that I know a wolf who is more understanding. Now, you wanted to confide in me about something? Our light-hearted conversation is about to become heavy once more, and I sigh, wondering how best to word what I've decided to reveal. A quick word, I think. Over the past year, I've come to very much enjoy your company, Nefero, especially over the past few weeks. I feel that we are becoming true friends. Nefero understands wolven friendship, so just to make sure that it's clear, I add, Wolven friends. I know that we are already friends by Khemian standards, just as you were friends with Marcus and Carbo. What can I say? You make great conversation. If my interpretations are correct, I believe that I feel the same way. Thank you. But because of that, I feel that I should tell you some things about myself that could be important. So, I want to explain what happened last night. I see. Then I will let you speak without interruption. Well, there is not much to say, simply that I had a terrible experience 3 years ago during the Cato riots. You may be aware that they targeted the university, among other institutions. They stormed our dormitories and attacked students and faculty. I was one of the unfortunate ones to be caught, likely due to my more obvious mane, and I was, humiliated in various ways. I look at Pharaoh's reflection, and he looks back at me, his expression attentive but stoic. What I experienced was mild compared to others, perhaps even merciful because I am still alive. I think my issue is that I witnessed many of these terrible things. This has all left an impression on my mind, a sort of. I furrow my brow, trying to think of the right words to describe it. Like an ache in my mind, one that I have mostly been able to overcome. But the events at the den last night, it irritated that ache a bit. I had been somewhat lucky that my spectacles had been knocked off and broken, leaving that happening beyond my immediate vicinity a literal blur, but it had been enough. The reaction that you saw from me is connected to this, being awoken suddenly in the unfamiliar den, then witnessing what happened. I was unprepared. But I am prepared now, and I doubt that ache will return like it did. I just wanted to explain it to you as a friend, though it is something that I only tell friends, so I hope you can keep it between us. I wait for a moment, somewhat satisfied with my tactics in explaining this to him. But he stays quiet. Anxiety knots up in a place just below my diaphragm. I look up at Nefero, though he is still gazing into the water. I hope I was able to make sense. I'm not insane. I understand what is happening shortly after these moments, and it's only happened a few times this past year. More silence. And I can face moments of extreme stress when I am prepared, and I can guarantee that I will always be prepared during our mission. If this isn't bad enough, my words waver towards the end, feeling my heart beginning to sink. Damn it. I should have known. Why had I been this naive? Nefero is a Khemian. They're known for many things, one of them being efficient. So why keep something that is inefficient? That is what I am. And being selfish, woven pride preventing me from admitting to it, trying to stay on the mission for my own personal reasons. I suppose you're upset with me? I mumbled dejectedly, feeling myself wanting to cry. It feels unusually easy to do now, after sobbing to my mother last night. Nefero finally looks at me. Scipio. Yes? I keep my voice light and attentive. I am upset, but not with you. I am frustrated with many things. I suppose that I am upset with Adastra as a whole. The jackal's voice is heavy and distant. Adastra? You already know this, but the catalyst of those riots involved me to an extent. Of course I do, but I'm still surprised that he's addressing it so directly. I had seen imagery of Nefero being prepared for execution by Cato shortly after the riots, but I never delved into it, into any part of the riots, because why would I? No one has spoken about it, not in the 2 years that I've been involved in the mission. And why would we? I clear my throat. I do know, yes. When I was kneeling in the amphitheater, certain my life was about to end, I was at peace. In fact, you might even say that I was willing to die, especially at that time. I had reasoned that it was an easy purpose and a quick path to redemption. Nefero trails his paw through the water. But when I was saved by a friend, shortly afterwards I witnessed his neck being slashed instead. At that moment, he was leaning against me. I saw his neck in detail. I then witnessed his final moments with his lover. I continued to listen attentively despite knowing the story. The human sacrifice saved Amicus's role and Nefero's life. I would have thought of it as an intensely joyous moment for the jackal. He is very brave. Nefero was quiet for a moment, still playing with the water. Yes, though he'd deny it and tell you that he simply never knows what he is doing and only goes with the flow, or something along those lines. The Lakshin phrase, use the river, comes to mind. A simple concept, but its literally meaning, to see the river around us as tools rather than obstacles, help the community survive and rise to the prominence of a triumvirate city. I tell you this because that experience changed something within me. I don't believe that I ever feared death until that moment, when it happened right before my eyes. For the first time, I watched a sapient, a friend, transition from existence to nothing. Nothing but an empty, damaged vessel cradled in his lover's arms. Now I think I understand. Memories surface of that bright blue sky day, slowly turning to a reddish haze as clouds of glowing orange towered over the city, and of Professor Urbicus lying on his back on the street next to me as I played dead. I watched his fitful death throes, his last sporadic movements as his damaged brain struggled to continue its existence. Before it finally failed. He had been trying to defend me, telling them to leave the students be, and so they turned their attention to him. His long, accomplished life had him serve under 3 different emperors before he dedicated the remainder of his life to instilling the art of rhetoric into the youth. And despite all of that, he'd use his last words to save me. My mind begins clouding slightly and Nefero notices. Sorry, are you alright? I clear my mind by focusing back on the present. Yes. I could have handled that more delicately, but my point is this. We shared a terrible moment 3 years ago, and while our experiences likely cannot be compared, it is a moment that affects us deeply in this very day. He pauses. Excuse my Khemian ways, but... Nefero's arm is suddenly around my shoulders, pulling me in towards him until my muzzle is right next to his, and he rests his head against mine. I freeze up slightly, unused to physical contact like this unless it's one of carnal intimacy. Ahewawi. I heard Nefero's voice unfiltered by my lingua for the first time, and of course he speaks perfect, beautiful Khemian. That is our word for it, old pain. I know that it is not in Adastran vocabulary, which makes this all the more frustrating. Here, you are expected to face inner turmoil alone. That is what upsets me. I recall that physical closeness between friends is common on Khemia, to the point that a wolf might have trouble distinguishing between friends and lovers. I relax a bit, then lean into Nefero more, partially because I'm happy to be a part of anything Khemian, and also because this is actually comforting. I understand what Nefero is telling me now. But I never expected this, the son of the pharaoh, to struggle with Ahewawi like I do. That word stirs something deep in my memory, and I try to think of why. Nefero gently pulls back. So understand that you do not have to hide your struggles from me. I would rather help you manage them. I'm still feeling the relief of Nefero's acceptance, and for a moment I forget my mission, knowing that I can confide in a friend, someone other than just my mother. But... I worry that I will be dismissed from the mission if it interferes with my duties. Everyone else seems to have moved past this moment. Why does my mind seem to sometimes temporarily malfunction against my will? Suddenly, I've just laid bare my deepest fears to the very jackal that I am supposed to decode. I realize that I must have been Adastra's worst spy, and the always suspicious part of my mind wonders if I'm being purposefully manipulated. I dismiss the thought almost as quickly as it forms, knowing that there is little to be gained from me, the scholar's assistant. Not only that, but it feels genuine. I've always admired Khemian culture, but for the first time I feel as if I'm being included in it, and it's wonderful. I know. Also, you should know that there are likely many others like you. They simply hide it well, just as you do. And while I would have advised you to resign for your own health. Khemia is much more stable. Nefero leans back on both paws, relaxed again as his usual impish nature returns. On the contrary, I believe going to Khemia might help you, especially if you're only there to record and experience the culture, as you said. Well, thank you, Nefero, for giving me this Khemian experience. It's refreshing to say what I am thinking. Liberating, isn't it? Keep practicing and you'll fit right in once we arrive on Khemia. That's when I remember that I've heard Ahewawi before, but as I'm pondering this, we are interrupted. Why don't you practice on me? I like some blunt answers right about now. Brunus's deep, rumbling voice startles me out of my thoughts, and we both turn to see the big wolverine standing about 10 paces behind us. How a creature so large managed to get so close without my noticing is beyond me. Morning, Brunus. Decided to join the Palace Club? Yeah, well, I was escorted by a bunch of drones, so I didn't exactly have a choice. Someone's a bit testy this morning. Someone's about to explain to me what the hell they did last night. My ears fall flat and I look away. Not you, Skip. I already know that whatever happened is his fault. Nefero smirks in response. If you want details, you'll have to accept my invitation one of these days. I tend to have a looser tongue during pillow talk. Don't take this the wrong way, but I am really damn curious as to why you haven't been kicked in the balls more than once on this moon. That seems to quietly sour Nefero's mood. Because, Brunus, video recording devices are a luxury on Adastra. So you have been? Good. You deserve it. The Wolverine turns to look at me. I still don't think that this is your fault, but maybe you can tell me what happened so we're not all wasting our breath. At this point, Nefero steps in. Someone attempted to attack us, likely from one of the separatist groups. It's under investigation. The immediate situation was taken care of, but Amicus is taking extra precautions to make sure that we are unharmed until we depart for Khemia. An attack? Like what? They threw crap at you sort of attack, or try to kill you sort of attack? The latter. But I will tell you the details later. For now, just enjoy the rare opportunity of being able to reside in the grand Adastrian Imperial Palace. What? Verna seems to take Nefero's hint and manages to stifle the reaction that would have followed. Well, as long as the two of you are okay. Honestly, this place gives me the creeps. I've only seen footage of this place when Kato tried to murder you. That and the fact that they've only got drones around here. I've been especially on edge because all my stuff got spirited away on a bunch of drones to who the hell knows where, and my medicine went with it. Haven't been able to refill for a whole day now. The big Wolverine manipulates the pipe in his mouth, the one that emanates the herbal smell that I recognize him for, before he sucks on it comically hard, his cheeks hollowing out. I clear my throat. Calm? There's a momentary pause during which both Nefero and Brunus look at me. I wonder if I made a fool of myself trying to communicate with the Imperial computer while outside. Thankfully, though?
Yes, Scipio?
Can you locate Brunus's belongings? You were flying them in by drone.
They have been deposited on the roof.
What?
I have information regarding the situation that may be of note. Brunus's luggage contained an illegal preparation of Khemian plant, poppy way, to be vaporized in a pipe contraption.
What?
It was properly disposed of via incineration, and a report has been filed and sent to Amicus suggesting a 100-year prison sentence for Brunus.
What? Nefero talks over the angry growls coming from the Wolverine. Why was it dropped off on the roof, Calm?
To follow cargo loading protocol, all members of the Khemian envoy have had their personal belongings moved to the roof.
Cargo loading? We are not leaving here until I got my damn pap. I would rather rip off my one arm than have to go through the stretch without my medicine. Just a moment. Does that mean that the ship has arrived? I'm answered by someone that I didn't even know is in the gardens with us. It's here! And that's actually where we're going to leave it for today. I left it there because that's where it actually ended the previous time, I think. Anywho, so we are finally going to get to go on the ship that takes us to Khemia. Yay! So we were introduced a little bit more to Brunus, which was my favorite character in the past. Or, I mean, he kind of is. Still, even though a lot has changed in the sprites, he's still one of my favorite characters. Um, we also got to see that Nefero still hasn't really dealt with what happened in the previous visual novel, which was his almost being beheaded, and then him witnessing Marco being beheaded. Well, actually not even being beheaded. He had the majority of his head almost sliced off. And it wasn't until the parents intervened that, he was fixed, but he was functionally dead. And the Pharaoh would have followed right after that. In fact, he would have actually been dead before that had Marco not sacrificed himself to save both Amicus and basically everyone else. And as with Scipio, these things sort of left like an imprint on them. And I guess it's his own form of PTSD in a way. Similar to what happened to Scipio, where he saw people die like literally right in front of him. Not only that, but like both with Scipio and with Nefero, somebody died for them. Marco died in order to ensure that Amicus and Nefero wouldn't die. And with Scipio, his professor died to ensure that his students wouldn't die. But yeah. So they are very similar in that respect, I guess. Which is something that Nefero probably has already noticed. And talking about Amicus now, if you were familiar with Adastra prior to this, you notice that he changed a little, but I attribute it to it being like, 5 years in the future from what happened previously. So he's a little taller, he's a little bit leaner. It's fine. It's fine. You can tell that he's trying to be a bit more emperor-like, because if you read Adastra, if you read Adastra yourself, you can tell that he was very childish. He was very like, he disregarded a lot of things, and that's why there was a lot of conflict, or a lot of shenanigans, I guess you could say, happening in Adastra, the story. Stuff that happened to him and Marco, stuff that happened because of him, because of how, because of just how the way he acted. And now you can tell that he's being a bit more responsible, a bit more, I guess, emperor-like, royal. Like, normally if you would fly off the handle at Nefero, he would just make this whole big scene. But now he's like composing himself. He knows that he has to compose himself. He knows that he can't allow Nefero to just to just go into like these dangerous places, to be unhoused, and he needs to know these things in order to keep him safe, but not just because, Nefero is kind of sort of his friend, but not really. It's because it would look bad on Adastra and him. And a lot of those things are not what Adastra Amicus would be thinking about. He would have been like, oh, well, that's on him. But yeah. What else? Again, the whole Skip's PTSD thing, his fear of death, which is very apparent in the fact that he cannot comprehend what would happen to a sapient when they die. What he was describing was the fear of death. The fear of not knowing really what's going to happen. And in the world of Adastra, the visual novels, when you die, according to the parents, you join what's called the amalgamation. The amalgamation is basically, I hesitate to use this comparison, but it's kind of like heaven, where everyone that is dead is uploaded to the amalgamation, and I say uploaded for a very specific reason, which is Adastra related, the visual novel. And everyone is there and is at peace, everyone is together, etc., etc. But a lot of people, there is a group of people that do not believe in the amalgamation being a good thing. seeing it more as sort of like a trap. Um, One of those was Mara, who you know about in the previous visual novel, and I guess Scipio sort of has a fear of being forced into this amalgamation with everyone else that has died and views it as basically hell. And Marco does briefly join the amalgamation in the previous visual novel, and it's something. Depending on the choices, because there are 3 choices in the previous visual novel that you can pick, which sort of change the outcome of the previous visual of the ending a little. Um, and it's either a good place that you go to when you die, and you can be with your loved ones or your loved one, or it's basically what Scipio envisions it to be, basically hell, where everyone is there suffering continuously. Um, so perhaps we might be exploring these type of topics in this visual novel if they're bringing it up so soon, because one of the things that they sort of sneak in towards the ending of Adastra is the topic of if the parents are actually good beings. And one of those things is the whole amalgamation topic about like well, I don't want to go into too much detail about it because it's getting too long right now, the outro. But yeah, it's anyways, so yeah. Now, what are your thoughts so far on Khemia? For the people that read Ad Astra and stuff like that, what do you, again, what are you gonna be expecting of this visual novel? Because Marco isn't coming back anytime soon, and the story's gonna focus on Skips and Nefero. Okay, remember that. Amicus is just there because he's the emperor, and he has to facilitate the relationships between Khemia, who they previously really hated, and Ad Astra, who pretty much everyone else in the Galactic Society pretty much views as savages. And they're not unfounded views. But anyway, so yeah, write down in the comments what you think, and thank you all for watching / listening. If you'd like to play Khemia yourself, you can do so by going down into the link in the description, which should have a direct link for the Itch.io page where you can download the game and play it yourself, or you can just go to itch.io.com and search Khemia and download it from there. I don't know if they will have the old version, but maybe they might. And if you would like to support the Echo Project and get early access to builds of Khemia and all the other visual novels that they do, like Glory Hounds, you can do so by going down to the link in the description, which should be the Patreon page. Also, I forgot to mention in the previous part, they are still working on Interia, which is a supplemental part for the original Ad Astra. Well, for Ad Astra, which is what's happening when Amicus and the group decide to take a tour of the moon, finally, now that, Kato is dealt with. And it does seem to set up some things that happen in this visual novel, so I think that's why they're still working on it, but they're going to be working on it for like 2 to 3 months at a time, and then they release something, whereas Khemia is going to be released every month, unless something happens. But yeah, so expect to see Khemia more often, and then in Interia, like ever so often. So yeah. Anywho, so I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.